Well, it's been more than 2 years, but now I'm finally back reviewing the rest of the Resident Evil movies. Resident Evil Retribution is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and stars Milla Jovovich as Project Alice, a test subject from the Umbrella Corporation. Following the story from the previous films, Alice awakes to find herself deep within Umbrella's secret operations facility, captured by an Umbrella mind-controlled Jill Valentine. The further she delves into this complex, the more her mysterious past is unveiled, as she tries to hunt for those responsible for the outbreak. Well, we are back, finally finishing off this series after a long 2-year and 3-month hiatus, I believe. Now, I haven't watched any of the previous films since then, or the reviews that I did, because compared to now, the quality was so bad from every perspective. But I guess this movie kind of helped me remember the overall overarching story from the previous films due to its long, I think around 10-minute long backstory intro. Look, I honestly didn't mind this movie. Yes, it has some flaws, but there's also some really good things about it as well. First of all, the trailer makes it seem a lot more awesome than it actually is. Okay, first there's mentions of, Moscow, Tokyo, New York, touring the world almost, right? While fending off zombies and monsters. And also the main villains. But what you don't learn in the trailer and you learn throughout this movie, warning, minor spoilers if you haven't watched it, but then again, it has been 8 years. All of this is a simulation. This is one of those moments where it seems bigger than it actually is, because technically none of the things that happen in this movie is real. Well, it kinda is, but it also isn't. It's just these guys stuck underground in Umbrella's facility, and where Umbrella creates all these monsters and zombies. Everything's basically a simulation under Umbrella's control. At first I was like, is this whole movie going to be underground in this facility? And sure enough it is, and it just makes this film seem a little bit more one-dimensional. But Umbrella also creates the people there too. And you see, one thing that I found really cool and interesting was how all of these human lives were formed and created based off of fake memories. And I was just like, dang. Because there is one scene where we see Alice, supposedly, living in a nice suburban home with her husband and kid. And we see Michelle Rodriguez again, even though, spoiler, she died in one of the previous films. And I was just like, what the fuck? But then later on, we learned that everything is a simulation. And then I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. Because of that, the real Alice, supposedly, and I keep saying supposedly because there are so many Alice clones, we don't know which one is the real one, but anyway, that's another story. Alice, she had someone to look after the entire movie. Well, not the entire movie, just the majority of the movie, which is still nice, but it reminds me of in Resident Evil 2, where Claire Redfield had to look after a girl, I think her name was Sherry, which was great because I found it really hard to care for anyone else in this movie. Not Ava Wong, not Leon Kennedy, hell, I even forgot Leon was in this, because he didn't get much screen time at all. But then I guess you can argue that Alice is the main focus in these movies. So, if you see it that way, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I didn't really care for anyone else except Alice, her daughter, supposedly, that she had to look after. One of the Michelle Rodriguez's. At this point in time, I still can't remember what her name is in the movie. But, which is at least fine because you can see what Alice is fighting for, and it adds that extra emotional element. Extra points for that. But other than that, this movie is kind of boring. Now, for the majority of the action sequences, it's mostly, these guys, right? Alice and her crew fighting these umbrella nobodies with a bunch of weapons and guns. Exciting, right? Now, I love Resident Evil, mainly for the fact that there's a lot of different zombies and monsters that are all infected with the T-virus in different ways, like heavily mutated monsters, demon dogs, all of this kind of really fucked up monsters. And we didn't really get to see that much of that here, except some of the monsters that we already seen before in previous films, such as the Licker. And from what I remembered, Jill Valentine turning evil from the previous film, it was one of the really big turning points and kind of exciting twists that we learn. And for the most part, she wasn't really a key focus in this film. She was, but at one point she just completely vanished and then turned up later in this movie. But Resident Evil, after not having watched the previous films for such a long time, this film really reminds me to how badass Milla Jovovich is as Alice, with all the stunts that she had to do. And I don't know, the stunts looked they weren't the best, but they made her out to be pretty badass again in this movie, which was nice to see. With the handling of all the guns and her tricks and backflips and all that. That was pretty nice to see after not having watched one of her films in a while. But anyway, a lot of things still don't make a lot of sense though. For example, she killed a Licker very easily with just a few shots to the head. And also, there was this one scene where a guy who was shot really brutally threw his gun up in the air, and a few seconds later just got up like everything was fine, catched his gun in midair, and then shot and killed somebody, while somebody might have died if he shot in the first place. Then we hear someone say, "Shoot her," but then they just don't, and then it cuts to a different kind of scene and then cuts back and the water flows down and then they just fucking run away. Obviously we don't want them to shoot her, but then again, it just doesn't fucking make any sense. I guess, the only reason it would make any sense was to keep the movie going and keep the audience happy. And I gotta say, the setup to the next movie was fucking fantastic, and it made me look forward to it so much. But did the final movie live up to its expectations though? I'm sorry to say, but you'll have to find that out in my next Resident Evil review. I'm going to give Resident Evil Retribution a B-. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Like and sub if you enjoyed, and as always, feel free to check out any of my previous videos. Until next time.